started from last year. And I used last year's, but I adjusted it with the numbers that he gave us and then with the request, so I had to do like the fund balance.
I'd be a nervous wreck if 30 minutes before my meeting. I bet.
Kid, we gotta appreciate that.
Yeah. But I tried my best.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
I'm just gonna see where we can put it. I don't know who we need to point it this way, that way. Thank you, yeah, for the help. Yeah, just. and then spin it around.
I like that stuff.
Like that?
That gives a good picture. Just gotta make sure.
We may have done this before, but I'm not sure. I want to make sure that one of my cards. Thank you. Is it principal? Which is right there.
See you, Robert.
Bet.
This memorial is going to be. So I saw the artist, no,
Sculpture?
the rendering, artist rendering on it. Yeah. So this is great. Looks just like the artist rendering. Very well done.
And handicap accessible.
What's gonna be up there?
Yeah, they'll end up being bridge.
Lit up at night type of thing too.
Yeah, the lights in here shine down and up.
Great.
Because if you look over here, there's the stars on this side, the giant stars.
Okay.
Hey, I'm waiting on some documents to get printed and then we'll get started. So thank you for being here.
How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm David Baer. Welcome to the Annual Tourist Development Council Budget Workshop. Thank you for everybody being here. Thank you, council members. Do we have a quorum, ma'am? And was the meeting properly advertised?
Yes, sir, it was. It was advertised Thursday, May 12th in the Scandia Sun Press.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. Okay, so the only agenda item is the budget because it's a budget workshop, and so there's not a printed agenda. But I want to thank everybody for being here. First, what we'll do is, because this is a workshop among the TDC members, I will open the floor to public input if there's any public discussion or if there's any public comments. If anybody would like to come up, we can. I don't think we had a sign up or anything, but if you'd like to come up and speak, please do, and then we'll get your name. Thank you. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
I will. Hello and thank you. My name is Joseph M. Denman, 1722 East Maxwell Street, Pensacola, Florida. And we are here just to speak with you about recognizing a Pensacola hero, General Dan Chappie James Jr., who was born 1/2 mile from the spot right here, but rose to the honor of 4-star general. He is a son of Pensacola. Anywhere that he was, whatever theater of war he was in or wherever, he mentioned where he was born. His mother was an educator here. She saw that we needed people to teach young children, poor children, so she opened up her own school. That is Miss Lily James. I'm just going to mention a few things about Chappie, and I hope that you all know who he is and know some of his records there. We're would like to build a monument, and here we have we've been working on this for 3 years, and we've gone forth. We have secured an aircraft. We have went through a lot of the red tape and dance for this. This is the first time I've addressed you all or spoke with you all. I'm going to throw out a few things out there just in case you don't know some of the things about General James. General James, he fought and flew in 3 wars. He taught Tuskegee Airmen. He stood in the gate of Wheelus Air Force Base in Libya and stared down Gaddafi and sent him and his tanks back to where they came from. This just tells you a little bit about the man, and about the man we want to honor here in Pensacola, because he is a Pensacola son. He also was commander of NORAD. NORAD is our base in the mountain in Colorado. It holds this whole continent, all the buttons, all the missions, everything that would happen. He was in charge of that for a number of years. He did that also. He's also the reason that a young man at 17 years old and 2 friends who lived right down 1 block from Joe Patty's and probably would not have made it to where they are today, went into the military, took us up to the Arno building, which was where you signed up, and sent us on good careers. And we're all back, and God bless, we're all safe, and we're all doing things for this community and our city of Pensacola. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Alexander, Dr. Alexander, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and greetings to the council members, and thank you for the opportunity for us to have a few minutes to share with you and why this is very important to me and the committee that serves to create this replica and what it is we're trying to do here to acknowledge General Chappie James. What's important to me, I grew up here in Pensacola, and his mother was my kindergarten teacher back in 1960. And we were still in a place of segregation in this community, in this country. And I remember very vividly being in her class at age 5 years of age, actually, and matriculating through school, eventually graduating and moving on into my own life and career, which I'm now retired chief of police in 2 American cities. But let me say this, why this is so important. One is the fact that his service to his country is unspeakable. We cannot say enough about General Daniel Chappie James. What he contributed to this nation in a time when oftentimes he had to work harder than anybody else. Imagine being in the 1960s in charge of air defense for this entire country and left this world as a retired 4-star general and was recognized by former President Ronald Reagan as one of the greatest Americans that we could ever acknowledge. So this replica here and what we're asking for, which have not been said yet, we're asking for money. That's our purpose for being here. But this is very important to this community, and not just to Pensacola to acknowledge such an American hero and patriot, but equally as important to acknowledge an American, because this monument, this project itself, will stand tall for this entire nation, and it will be centered here, right here in Pensacola, Florida, near Bayfront Parkway. So in ending here, we humbly ask for funding for this project, because that is critically important, and a lot of work, a lot of energy, and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears from people who are working out there as we speak this very moment to make this become a reality. And whatever help that we can get from this council would certainly be appreciated. And if we need to talk numbers, I'll share that. But I want to be very clear. We're really, really humble by having the opportunity to be here in front of you all today. Thank you very much.
Well, let's don't guess. I mean, how much?
$300,000.
Any other questions from the council?
Yes, sir. I'm just curious, haven't heard, this, and certainly understand how deserving General James is, what an incredible figure he is. Speaking specifically to the finances, what is that 300 to go towards? I know we've secured the jet, and, we're working through some other funding with the artist. What is the 300 secure?
Yeah, Joe, you want to speak more to that?
Well, we can both speak on it. The other money is for the completion of lights, the completion of the rest of the scope of this, moving those grander plants down there somewhere else so we can build this monument. Actually, SCANSA has given us the go that they will put the plane on a barge. It's out at the naval base being restored, and bring it and put it on the pedestal there. This is operating money. No monies for anything other than this memorial.
And we'll be more than glad to have that outlined for you, Mr. Moore, in terms of what this money would be used for, certainly if you need that.
That would be helpful for me, yeah.
Okay.
This is a
I don't know about the others,
minimal
but-
amount we're asking for. Everybody on the team has given, and this is a minimal amount in nowadays.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Commissioner?
Gentlemen, what's the total budget for the project? I've seen the renderings and read the articles and very familiar with what's going on. What's the grand total budget?
The grand total of the budget, if I'm not mistaken, is about $3 million.
$3 million. And is there a private sector component in terms of the funds that are being raised?
We're beginning to
Okay.
do that in this coming June 1.
Okay.
Nobody has been actually asked to give anything.
Well, I want to be supportive regardless of what this council determines. I want to be supportive in my capacity as county commissioners. So please send some information. I assume you guys have a 501c3
Yes.
set up and everything? Because
Yes, we do.
each of the commissioners have some discretionary funds, and this is sounds like a very worthwhile purpose. So from District 1, I'll certainly be contributing to the effort, regardless of what we do here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Gosh.
Any other TDC members?
Are there any questions that anybody has about General James or about what are attempting to accomplish here? We have, I'll say, our city, which used to be a town, we have DeLuna, we have Galvez, we have golfers, we have, and this is the cradle of naval aviation, and we have more Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, Navy here. This is a military town. This is just one more offering to our community, how proud we are of what we do here and what we stand for. Thank you.
Yeah, and let me add that in closing real quick. It's not just a military town, but we are a true American city that sits in this great country of ours, and nothing could be more rewarding for all of us to acknowledge our own, who's from right here, born and raised in Pensacola. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Anyone else like to address before we get into business of the budget? No? Okay, thank you. All right, so council members, we have distributed just a proposed 2023 annual budget. And as I wanted to, I sort of put this together based on last year's budget that we approved, and there's some other items. So what I wanted to try to do first is to start and just go down, starting at the top and go down, talking about at the very top, you see the revenue section. The county, Stephen Hall had, the budget manager, had said that the county was proposing a collection of $18,750,000. And so that shows in the first three lines, the $11,250,000 is the first 3 cents, 3.75 million for the fourth and for the fifth cent, and that equals the $18,750,000. The reserve fund balance was to was an additional funds move forward out of the Fund 108 that we currently have, that would fund the unified budget and the outside agencies at their current amount that they received this year. So that's why the $1,625,000, you see that the fund balance is bringing that forward to cover the revenue. As you know, the statute requires the county on any fund to reserve 5%, to only fund 95% of anticipated revenues. So that 5% holdback is statutory, that's $937,500. 5th cent reserves, the county commission has very publicly stated that at least in this next fiscal year, the 5th cent will not be allocated through the TDC budget, that it will be held into reserves. So those funds came out of that total revenue piece. That's the $3,750,000. And then county administrative costs, statute says to cover actual costs up to and not to exceed 3%. For discussion purposes, at this point, we have plugged in 3% of the $18,750,000. to get to, I believe, unless I made a mistake on my formula, but to get to the $562,500. Yep. So then that shows a total budget of $13,500,000 to be spent, plus the 1.625 million of the fund balance forward. So then we get into the different, after we've removed the required expenditures out of, strip that off of the top, the next bucket you see is the Board of County Commissioners, county admin expenditures, and that is the annual allocation to the Bay Center at $1.5 million, the beach mowing and Bob Sykes, I guess in previous years there was some repair work in that budget for Bob Sykes, but the beach mowing contract at $125,000, marine resources budget at $325,000, and $500,000 for beach renourishment, for a total of, for that bucket of $2,450,000. Yeah, $450,000. So then we get into does anybody have any questions so far? I don't want to keep.
David, I would just, Captain Turpin's here, and we did get a $500,000 donation from an individual, and
Yes,
we're hoping that we can combine that with some money from TDT specifically for diving artificial reefs. So could we hear from Captain Turpin on that? Because I think that's a very worthwhile, that brings a lot of tourism. Captain Turpin?
Welcome, Robert.
Good afternoon, everyone. Robert Turpin, Marine Resources. Today is the 16th anniversary of the date that we sank the Oriskany. Wow. And we 16 years, and the economic evaluation that we've obtained is somewhere between $3 and $5 million a year of direct economic benefit due to the Oriskany. If you multiply that by the 16 years at the midpoint of $4 million, that's $64 million. And that's just such a great tribute to a great ship. And Eileen Beard, who actually helped us obtain the Oriskany, she was a big part of us getting the Oriskany, donated $500,000 to the Stewardship Endowment Fund for Escambia County and earmarked $400,000 of that for a large vessel or numerous large vessels. And her intent was for us to take that money and use that as seed money to leverage additional funding that would be required. I've contacted the Naval, the MARAD, Maritime Administration, to find any ships that might be available. There are some ships available, and we're looking at numbers on those. So we would be bringing forth a proposal, with sufficient detail at the appropriate time. But I just wanted to thank the county and the Tourism Development Council for the ability to do these and other great projects.
Great, thank you. I knew I paid too much for that certification at the Scuba Shack 35 years ago. She's got that kind of money to give. No, that was very generous of Eileen. Please thank her for us.
And have you dove the Oriskany?
I have not. I haven't.
Okay.
I was certified. I'm not certified anymore. I haven't done it.
We'll have to get you
25, 30 years.
back in the water and have you look at that. It's a once-in-a-lifetime dive. Thank you all.
Any questions for Robert? Or no, thank you. No questions. Thank you, Commissioner. That's great. That's great news. So, any other questions to this chart so far? To this sheet?
Is the beach renourishment, is that gonna happen in 23? Or is that just if we need it?
So what we did it beginning last year, the 500,000 was the first year that we did it out of our annual budget, is to put that money into reserves, to build the reserves, to get a match, to be able to do it at once. I think it cost last time we did it, maybe $10 million, and a portion of those funds, I can't remember if they were federal or state funds, but there were other matching funds. So we're trying to build a reserves to get to the matching fund amount. We don't need to do it right now. Mr. Reeves, you had a comment or question?
Just, in passing, you said we got 13,500,000 plus the 1,625,000, which is
15,
how do you
15,125.
reserve fund balance?
So, Stefan, if you want to come up and speak to that, we have those in Fund 108. We currently have north of $11 million.
Yes, sir. Mr. Reeves, so basically what that is, it's a portion of our fund equity that we're just kind of front budgeting that versus what will ultimately be the carry forward that will come forward in the next year, usually around the January timeframe.
So the fund equity includes the 5% holdback. So the statutory 5% holdback that we're not spending at the beginning of the year. At the end of the year, it's still sitting in the fund, unspent. And so that's a portion of this 1.6
Correct.
million.
It's your income, which is your revenue less your expenses. It's basically an income statement from the prior year. So that difference rolls forward. So that's your fund equity. Correct.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. All right, so moving into the next section is the outside agencies. And these are proposed at the African American Heritage, Naval Aviation Museum, UWF Historic Trust, and the fireworks / and/or it said others. Those and before Summerfest. Those first four are level funding from the current year's current year's funding is recommended for next year in this proposal. And then Summerfest, we've currently allocated in the current year $76,000. So I've just plugged it in at a round number, 75,000. And there was a request to us at our last meeting that went to the Board of County Commissioners at their Committee of the Whole for $500,000 for the America's Magic, for the sailboat, for them to come in and do all their training here for the next however many years and hopefully bring the international race here along with many other things. But that $500,000 has been plugged in there for next year to bring that section to a total of $1 million. So the remaining funds out of that $15,125,000, which is the $13,500,000 plus the balance forward of $1.6 million, goes to the unified budget, which is approximately 65% of that $13,500,000 plus that carry forward. So that brings the unified budget to $10,400,000, broken out based on the MOU between the three agencies.
So what did ACE Sports and Visit Pensacola get previous year?
It was $10,420,052.63 was I think the allocation, at least on our spreadsheet from last year. Roughly the same thing, a little bit more. Each of them, last year ACE received $1,641,158.29.
And sports marketing,
$963,854.
and Visit Pensacola?
$7,815.39. Well, that was what was proposed. That was also proposing the ARPA funds, but then there was, I guess I need to call Stefan back up because things changed after I'm reading our proposal budget that we recommended to the TDC, to the board, county commissioners last year. And after that, was it before it? When was the 5th cent was levied? That included the 5th cent. But they didn't get the 5th cent through the entire year
I
as a
believe the
portion.
5th cent started at April 1st, I think, last year.
Yes, of 2021.
Correct.
Yep, and so the current year, 2022, were the numbers that I was just reading. And then what we're proposing is next year, 2023, beginning October 1st.
Didn't we say that we weren't doing Summerfest next year? We were gonna do it this year, but not next year?
What I recall us telling Cadillac is that we were not going to do it through his for-profit business, that if he came back to us with a not-for-profit tax exempt organization like a lot of these other outside agencies, that we would support his event, because his event was putting heads in beds. They were creating economic impact through the tourism. He had a study done. I think Visit Pensacola may have done the study for him through their agency to show it.
So we don't know if he's done that yet, but we assume
We
he
don't.
will.
Correct, he said he will. So I put that placeholder in. Obviously, if he doesn't do that, and he comes back to us or directly to the county commission, without that structure in place, then we've agreed not to fund him.
Okay, help me on this. In the numbers you and I were just talking about, there's our famous fund balance of $1,625,000, and then in the next subtotal, 2023 surplus is $1,275,000. So what's the difference between the carryover and the surplus?
So the surplus becomes a carryover. So there's the 13,500,000 up towards the bottom of the second section at the top, as the total budget. That does not include that 1.625 million. If you take those other expenditure buckets, the budget, the Board of County Commission admin line items totaled, the outside agency totals, and the unified budget totals, then you get a total of 12,225,000. You subtract that from the 13,500,000, and you get a total of 1,275,000. So that is revenue that is not allocated in these different budgets to be expended.
So basically, what you're saying is instead of what you don't have here is what you're proposing for the unified budget.
No, the 10,400,000 is the total unified appropriation that's proposed, $10,400,000.
Well, what's the 11,172,565?
Okay, so that's in the next section that we'll get to. That's sort of like, that's the fund balance. Fund 108 currently has $11,172,565 in it as of March 15th or something. Yeah, March 15th. And so that is more of a balance sheet discussion than the P&L for the next fiscal year. Because as you recall, one of the other items that the TDC is working on, we have a committee that Shirley's chairing on creating restricted fund balances. And so where do those funds come from? Some of it in future years will be proposed to be funded through our annual P&L. But currently, we're proposing taking that fund balance that's currently in the fund balance and funding these different buckets immediately. So the bottom of that page, and you turn the page to the top, you see those different buckets. So fund balance carry forward, the 11 million, the bottom of the front page. The next item is a unified budget distribution allocation. That is out of And I don't know what that's what's currently being, Stephanie, you want to come speak to that one also? You might as well stay up front.
So
Get your-
what is
Get your
that?
steps in.
In other words, how does that relate at all to numbers right above before you got to that
It
seven?
doesn't.
Mr. Bear, if I can help.
Yes,
So
please.
basically, what Mr. Bear is talking about right now is our annual recurring budget. So it's again, it's our projected revenues and anticipated expenditures that we have on an annual basis. And then what you see in that section below, that's basically discussing the old money that has been brought into the current fiscal year, and then there's a plan on how to spend that. So it's two different things that we are discussing at the moment.
So everything above the two double lines, everything above is strictly income and expense.
Primarily, except for that 1.6, which is, again, it's just a portion of that fund balance forward that would happen next year.
So it was income from last year, the 1.6.
Correct.
Okay. Till the next question.
And also the other thing, so we generally do project our revenues conservatively or relatively conservatively. So if we have additional revenue growth, that will certainly plus up that fund balance carry forward from the current year into next year as well.
But you can live with the 562.5 regardless of how much more income we have, right?
Certainly,
That goes to the clerk, who administrates the program.
correct.
Unless you'd like to make a recommendation, change it.
That we cap it?
Well, are you prepared for that conversation? I'm happy to have it.
He may not answer any more questions.
Well, he will. It doesn't go to his office. It goes to the clerk's office, and he works for the county. All right, so that's the proposed income is the 18,750,000 for the 5 cents. And then you see the statutory holdback, the 5th cent going into the reserves not to be spent. County admin cost, which is the clerk, at 3%. And then the expenditures. And so that will actually have 1.275 million unspent from the proposed revenue. So that will then go into the fund balance or be available for projects like we've had this year that came up. Last year we had on our line item budget, the Board of County Commissioners special projects, and it was about $845,000 or so that ended up getting spent on beach park facilities. There were 2 pavilion roofs that got replaced. They repainted the beach water tower beach ball and remodeled bathroom and fixed a deck and some steps around that bathroom. That totaled about $845,000. This year I did not put that line item in there, but that money goes into the Fund 108, and the County Commission have the authority, well, within the statute's requirements, they have the authority to spend it on those projects.
And I would look for some spending to happen this year as well. There's some beach-related stuff that fits within
So-
what we do.
So if the subtotal is 12,225,000, almost on the bottom of the page, and you got 1275, why aren't those two numbers added together?
Well, if I added them,
You got 12,225,000, and right below that, you've got 2023 surplus, 1275. My question is, Why aren't the two numbers added together?
I mean, why don't I have another line item with that total? I just,
Well, my point is, do we have 12,225, or do we have 13,525,000?
it would just be 13,500,000 if you add those two numbers together.
Okay, but
And that's the
but what you're
number.
saying is we definitely have 13,550,000.
13,500,000.
Okay. I'll take the 50,000 off, okay? But, so we have 13,500.
Plus the fund balance forward that we added to the revenue at the top and then subtracted it in, at the unified budget.
Okay, how are we gonna spend that $13,500,000?
So that's those next three sections right there. The Board of County Commissioners admin, 1.5 million going to the Bay Center, 125,000 for beach mowing, 325,000 for marine resources, 500,000 for beach renourishment, 50,000 for the African American Heritage, $100,000 for Naval Aviation Museum, 200,000 for UWF Historic Preservation, 75,000 for the Sertoma.
Summerfest?
Well, for the Sertoma fireworks, 75,000 for Summerfest, 500,000 for American Magic, and then 10.4 million for the unified budget, broken out based on their memo of understanding. 15.75% goes to ACE of the unified budget, 9.25% of the unified budget.
How much goes to ACE?
15.75% of the total unified budget appropriation.
And how much goes to,
Pensacola Sports is 9.25%. 9.25. And then 75% to Visit Pensacola.
okay, so with 13,500,000, are you telling me that ACE gets 1,382,000?
No, because that number was based on 8
All I'm trying
million.
to do is for you to give me the numbers that each
For
of
ACE?
those
Okay.
agencies are getting the incoming year. Because the way this looks like, they're getting less money than they got last year.
Give me 1 second, I'll tell you the numbers. I apologize.
I didn't think you were keeping it a secret.
Hold on. Why is this not working? Okay, so that total for ACE is 1,638,000. The number for Pensacola Sports is 962,000. And the number for Visit Pensacola, 7,800,000.
7 million,
800,000, for a total of $10,400,000.
So it doesn't have the surplus in it.
It does.
I understand the 10,400,
10
but if
million.
you add, I just asked, if you added the 12,225 to the 1,275, it comes to 13,500,000.
Yes, sir.
But we're only spending 10,400.
On unified budget. The 10,400,000 is only for the unified budget. The additional 3,100,000 are for all of the other outside agencies and the county budgets.
So the 15.75% is 15.75% of what number?
The unified budget's appropriation, which is 10,400,000.
Okay.
Anybody else have questions or comments or concerns about the spreadsheet and the allocations or appropriations? Any recommendations for changes or anything?
Do we have any other funds besides Fund 108?
Well, you'll have to ask the guy to your right, but
You do not.
we are charged by statute for making the recommendations and monitoring the spending of the tourist development tax, which is Fund 108.
Well,
They can
carry
put more
forward
funds
to
into it.
Fund 108.
That is Fund 108. That is Fund 108. It's carrying forward some of the funds that have been collecting in that pot from surplus from prior years. So last year, as an example, we budgeted $15,350,000, but we collected, for the current year, but we're collecting close to $20 million this year.
Okay, well, let me ask you a trick question. We talked about having a reserve in case we had a hurricane or a bridge out or what have you. Do we have any money in that reserve specifically for that purpose?
That is a very good question, and that is the next section on that sheet that you have, is where we're getting to it.
So it wasn't a trick question at all.
No, it was not. It was a
Just
good
have a trick
segue.
answer, huh?
It was a good way to segue to the next section. And Shirley, do you want me to discuss it, or do you want to
You can,
go?
you can go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm not trying to take I don't want to take your thunder. Your committee's done a lot of great work, and appreciate everything. So that is the next section. Below that bold black line, it starts out as fund balance carry forward as of March 15th, 2022. And that showed at that time, our balance in Fund 108 was $11,172,565. And the next item on there, sorry.
Now, you know what my next question's gonna be, right?
Go ahead and ask it.
How do you reconcile 11,172 with, I give up. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, Stefan, do you want to come talk about this next line item, the unified budget distribution allocation, the $1,371,000 that you're currently?
Okay, so basically, our fund balance carry forward from our prior year was roughly 11.1 million. So currently in the unified budget distribution allocation, an additional allocation occurred this year that went to the unified budget. This council had approved the $1,371,806 Then it went to the Board of County Commissioners. The Board of County Commissioners just approved that, I believe, at the last meeting. OMB, which is where I work. So we've done the PO so that Visit Pensacola can get spending that money to finish the fiscal year. So the additional allocations that you'll see right below that are things that technically haven't happened yet, but in meeting with Ms. Cronley and Mr. Bear and certain other people on the TDC Reserve Committee, we've come up with these additional amounts. So public facility restricted reserve, 3.5 million, that is anticipated.
Just stop right there. You've got a fund carry balance on March the 15th that belongs to Fund 108.
Correct.
Fund 108, $11 million.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What is the unified budget distribution allocation? What that sounds like to me is you had some extra money.
Of that 11.1, 1.3 has already been approved by this council and also been approved by the board as an additional allocation to the unified budget through Visit Pensacola in the current fiscal year.
So those dollars are coming out of, the 1.3 million comes
Out of
out
the-
of the 11 million balance.
Correct.
That are committed to those agencies.
You know, to me, you're asking us ultimately to vote on something, and when I see that, I'm not concerned about it, I'm concerned about understanding it.
Well, we're gonna make
When I see 1,638,000, and down here I see 1,371,806, in my mind's eye, that's
The 1.6.
75% being added to Darren's budget, and 15.7 is being added to ACE, and 9.25 is being added to the Sports Association. Hello?
So those funds, that 1.3 million that's at the last line on that page, is being allocated in the current fiscal year. The TDC approved that, recommended it to the Board of County Commissioners, and they agreed and approved it. And it's being allocated
Okay,
now.
then let me ask you this. The VP unified budget here, what fiscal year are we dealing with those numbers?
That is the proposed 2023 that I have at the very top. That's
Okay?
for next fiscal year after October, starting in October 1st.
Okay, so we have agreed to spend that 1 million, so 371. So when you gave me the 1,000,006, the 963, and the 7,815, did that include that 1,371,000?
No, those numbers that I gave you are for the proposed 2023 fiscal year.
No, you gave me the previous
Oh.
for the 2021.
No, they did not, and that's why I made that statement before. That was what we budgeted last year. I actually do not know exactly what has been appropriated in the current fiscal year.
So we don't
Because there have been
know,
a couple of amendments to that appropriation because of fifth cent collections and the commitments from the county commission and other overages that were also committed. So the numbers that I gave you earlier from the current fiscal year are actually greater. The appropriation is greater than what we budgeted because they've made, I think, 2 amendments to the current fiscal year. These numbers that we're talking about on this sheet are for next fiscal year, which will be less than the current fiscal year's appropriation,
it'll be less than the current fiscal year unless we have tourism that won't wait, buying Miller Lite all the way.
right, at the hotels at the beach.
And the RV.
Not at the RV parks.
RV
They sell Bud Light.
RV rentals are way down.
Yeah.
Got to get some more advertising.
Okay, so that 1.3 million has been appropriated and is appropriated the current fiscal year that will reduce that $11,172,000. what is remaining out of that is being proposed by the committee, Shirley's committee, to create those restricted funds within Fund 108. And that is on the next page, the top of the next page, which is the Public Facility Restricted Reserve at $3.5 million. The Unified Budget Marketing Restricted Reserves at $2.5 million. And Special Event Restricted Reserve at $500,000. The proposal is to immediately fund those balances from that, whatever's left out of the 11 million after you take the 1.3 out. So $9.8 million. To leave a total in the Fund 108, $3,372,000.
For fiscal 2022.
That, which will be, yes, at the end of fiscal, yes, we do that now or whenever the Board of County Commissioners agrees to do that. I don't know if they want to make that part of their budget discussion on whether or not they're going to fund those restricted out of that money, because they're not spending it, they're just putting it in reserves, into a restricted reserve. So I don't know how they need to do that, but it's clearly going to have to be at a public meeting.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask
Yes.
a question? So is this the money that you're talking about setting aside in case we have a catastrophic disaster?
Yes.
So that we can keep the thing going? Okay.
That is the beginning of those funds.
No, it's prudent, but by statute, Stefan, how long can we roll those funds around? Can it be in perpetuity? How big could we make those funds before they have to be spent?
We could do it in perpetuity, but we just have to make sure that we keep the pennies segregated, since there are specific criterion for the expenditure on each penny.
Yeah. No, I think it's prudent, it's reasonable. We have a meeting Thursday. I can socialize it during Commissioners Forum. I'm frankly quite surprised we hadn't done it, that this commission hadn't done that before, given what we've seen with the oil spill and some other things that have happened, plus going into a recession, more than likely, hopefully a slight one. But
It took a pandemic.
okay.
No more. I mean, we've been beat up and we've been in serious trouble
Yeah.
because of the hurricanes and the oil spill and now the pandemic. And so this committee, this
Well,
board is,
I've been working with Stefan on some other issues, some other things about taxes, and in looking at a long chart from '01 all the way forward, you can see the blips, but the small recession that the pandemic caused, you didn't skip a beat. Less than like $1 million, and then bang, it was right back up. So, but this next one could be different than that. Right. So.
I would also just like to add, this is a great opportunity. The carry forward in the TDT Fund 108 fund has never been quite this large. So this is definitely that perfect opportunity to do this thing that the council is working on today. So this is a perfect time to do it.
Not to monopolize the questions, but Stefan, the only other thing I would say to this council here, and I would ask Stefan, there's a lot of need out there, and of course, we're under a lot of pressure in every aspect of our budget, our general fund in particular. So if there's other things that could be funded by this, you just got to watch this money, because there's 5 egos on that board, and there's a lot of things that this money could be spent for, and it would preserve our general fund. So.
and y'all are greedy.
Well, I'm kidding.
I'm just joking.
But I would just say, it's a great idea, but, if it stays, if it lasts, well, we'll have to see what happens with that.
Well,
Before
so-
you sit down, one more time. There is on the front page, at the bottom of the page, fund balance carry forward 3/15/2022. On that page. And on the next page, the very last thing, is fund balance carried forward fiscal year 2023. Okay?
That is Mr. Bear's estimation of what that number would be.
Well, aren't those the same fund balances at 2 different dates?
Yes, sir. That's a great point, Mr. Reeves, but absolutely. So essentially what would be happening, you're going to have the old money that hasn't been spent, which potentially would be these pots of money that we're discussing right now. So you would have that plus that. So technically it would be, potentially could be that 11.1 plus 5.6 that you would see rolling forward.
Yeah, I think I have an
But we'd
error.
be spending 10,400,000 of it on our
Your
unified budget
Yes, sir, absolutely.
of that 11,000.
Of the 11 million, correct.
But we'll also have a whole nother year of revenue, 5 cents being collected.
Well, I understand the 5 cents, and I think, I'm glad they're reserving it for whatever we're reserving it for. But I think before they start fooling around with our budget, if they need, a few bucks to spend on themselves, they should maybe take it from the 5 cent.
Jim, I think the board, I've heard the board discuss, we got to do something with the Civic Center. There's a competing proposal for a field house for travel teams. I mean, there's a couple different things that 5th cent money is gonna help us pay for, directly related to bringing people in and putting heads in beds. So, I think the discussions at the Board of County Commissioners it was a heavy lift getting that 5th cent. It should have happened a long time ago. I was a big proponent of it. Others were not, and we see what happens. But now that we've got it, that really has to be put toward our Civic Center. It's falling apart. The chiller's breaking down. The ice plant breaks. Big names come in, and it's just, it needs, we got to do something. I've brought it 3 or 4 times before the board. Now we've got a revenue source. We paid it off. We paid off the bond, right, Stefan? I mean, it's paid for, right? Yeah. So now there's time to do it. We got the revenue, so you'll see something coming on that.
And
Shirley?
Jim, also, on our committee, basically, we're given not given, but we are taking the 5 cent to go to the Board of County Commissioners that we're not putting it in what we call reserves.
It's over the top.
That's a separate reserve
Separate
bucket.
reserve.
So the proposed reserves, there's essentially 3 of them. The public facility restricted reserve, the unified budget marketing restricted reserve, and the special event restricted reserve. And what is being proposed out of that committee is to fund them at those levels right there at the top of that second page, out of the current fund balance. And then there's a path to continue to fund those to a cap level per budget. I did not put that information on this spreadsheet, but that information is, so 50% of any balanced fund carry forward, so any surplus throughout the year that we may have, 50% of it goes into Fund 108 unrestricted. 25% of that, so like last year, we budgeted 15,350,000, or the current year, we're collecting roughly 20 million, so you're talking about $6.5 million. But the board has made
Where did the 50% formula come from?
the committee's recommendation.
Yeah, this is a recommendation. It
Just take-
hasn't been approved.
Yeah,
but-
take half of the money that's in surplus and put it into Fund 108 unrestricted. It's not going into any of those other 3 buckets. 50% goes unrestricted. Then to fund those other 3 buckets, the next 25% of those funds would go to the unified budget operations, and 15% to unified budget restricted reserves with a $5 million cap. So
So
You can-
where is all this, where's this, is this on
We
a
just
rock on,
it's,
met- We
Go ahead.
just met before here to get to where we are. At our next TDC meeting, we will present this to the TDC council, then hopefully we get your blessing to go to the Board of County Commissioners.
yeah, all the details of how those get funded. This is the current situation is with the roughly 10 million bucks that's in the fund after this appropriation to unified.
but the 50% of the extra that goes in unrestricted, that means if we wanted to spend $300,000 on a monument somewhere, we could spend it out of that 50%?
Yes, we would make the recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, as long as it met the requirements of the statute, which pennies, because that's the other requirement is it the first 3 cents, or is it the fourth or the 5th cent? They've said 5th cent's off the table, it's not open for discussion, so these would be just the 4th cent, the first 4, and we can only spend for museums and other things, we can spend the money.
Stefan, let me ask you that
Yes, sir.
if this
Public facilities.
council wanted to spend some money on that Chappie James, is that an allowable expenditure?
So certainly, you could use it on a monument or something, but depending on which pennies, it's probably going to be the first 3 pennies or
Okay.
something like that, if that is something that council would like to do. Generally, what you're going to see as far as like advertisement and tourism, that can come from the first 4.
And-
Again, tourist
and-
promotion.
And I think if the committee's bringing this forward, they need to bring forward how to best place, that 50% needs to come from the most versatile 1, 2, 3, or 4 of the funds. In other words, what kind of funds we place in reserve, I think we ought to
They give us the most
Understand.
flexibility.
what our plan is and leave ourselves the most flexibility with anything that is unrestricted, because you can say unrestricted, but what he's saying is it might be restricted for what you can spend it on. Right?
Per statute, correct.
Statute takes the highest level of restriction. And then if you meet those criteria of what those restrictions are in the statute per penny, then the funds may be spent per those restrictions. Unrestricted. I know that sounds crazy, but you can spend it on any of these projects that meet those statutory requirements. So I believe marketing can be, all 5 cents can be spent on
Yes.
marketing. So if it's a marketing campaign, it's totally unrestricted because the statute restrictions allow for marketing of all, use of all 5 cents. I believe public facilities, unless they're a sports complex or a convention center, you can only use the 4th and 5th cent. Am I correct?
That sounds correct, yes.
So if it were to, as an example, to go towards those types of projects, only whatever is in that budget of the 4th and 5th cent may be spent on it.
Can I ask Shirley, does your committee have a target that you're going to hit in terms of building these up to a certain number? Like for the public facility restricted reserve, what would your target be?
With the public,
Like if we went several years with no bad weather and things kind of carry on very well, where would you want that to land before we'd start drawing it down?
let's see, I'm trying to look here as to what
Shelley, on that one, we didn't have
we didn't have a restriction on.
Oh, you're
the-
just going to
Like
keep?
a limit. There's no
Okay.
cap
There's
on
no
that one.
cap on that.
Okay.
With the Unified Budget Restricted Reserve, there was a $5 million cap.
Yes, ma'am.
And then the special event, $2 million. But, and then the other, with our beach renourishment, we hope to put aside $500,000 each year, with a cap of $5 million from us. Then hopefully, when it's time to renourish, we can go to SRIA to get $5 million, then take that to the state and get matching funds of $10 million. So that's our plan. But yes, on the public facilities, we did not.
Okay. Yeah, I just was curious. Thanks.
Who's on the committee?
Myself, and Tim Patel.
3 of you?
I'm not.
No,
I'm not on the
David's
committee.
not on it. And then Darren Schaefer, and Stefan, and Mary from ACE, and.
Laura from Pensacola Sports.
Yes, so those 3 are the unified budget recipients, so we wanted to get their input. You want to come?
No, it's not so much I want to come, I just want to be cognizant of I mean, if you see nothing else, you see the potential, again, the potential of 300,000 coming at you, and you see the potential of what does it cost to sink a boat. You know, maybe we need to do, a tugboat. But I mean, do we have any idea what kind of money?
But our committee is to set up the to do the reserve accounts. We're not, it'll be this committee.
Yeah, but I like where you get into establishing the percentages of unrestricted. Why 50%? Why not 60%? My point is how you, if what David says is really true, once you fill up all the statutory requirements and you can spend the money any way you want to, although I'm not sure I believe that, but I like it if it's true, and we're just, it shows the complications of the Sunshine Law. This is, if we're going to give everybody a test when we get through with Fund 108, it could be tough.
So what I was trying to say about within the statute's requirements and it being unrestricted, let's use an example. If there's $500,000 there from all 5 cents, and let's say it's equal, it's $100,000 for the first, second, third, fourth, fifth each, and you want to do marketing, all 500,000 can be spent.
Okay, but could all 500,000 be spent on a monument?
And that was what I was going to say. No, they cannot.
Well,
So
then to say it's been spent on first, second, third, whatever, and it's unrestricted, it isn't unrestricted.
it's unrestricted within the guidelines of the statute's restrictions. That's what I kept saying. It sounds funny, but
Oh, okay.
once you get past the restrictions of the statute, then you can spend it.
I got you.
Meaning unrestricted, they can spend it on any projects that may come up to
And
the
my
county
point
commission or to us.
simply is noting those restrictions, that we should be mindful of what penny we put where.
I agree. So using that, the unified budget marketing restrictions, that can be all 5 cents or any of the 5 cents. So put whichever pennies into that to fully fund it that have the most restriction on it, right? If there's the first 2 or first 3 are restricted to marketing, a sports complex or a convention center, and we don't think we're going to, and we know that it's going to be used on budget marketing restrictions, let's just put those 3 cents in that bucket. That way, the rest of the funds that go into the unrestricted, the Fund 108 that aren't in one of those buckets have as much flexibility as possible. Right, that's what you're saying. I agree.
Exactly.
Stefan will have to work that magic with our guidance coming from the county. So,
Do we take any kind of vote today?
I don't think we can because this is just a committee, a workshop. But this is the recommendation. Absorb this, and we're having our next TDC meeting is on June 21st, where we are going to make the recommendation. The plan is on the agenda to make the recommendation to the county commission for the projected fiscal year 2023 TDT budget. And also make these recommendations for creating these restricted funds and what triggers the use of those funds, et cetera, and how we refund them after they've been used. And so I wanted to make sure we had this committee meeting today, this workshop today, to discuss this information. We can't I'm planning to take this and move it forward to the committee, to the board meeting, to our council meeting, where we can make a decision. So if you see anything that you'd like to change on this, please come to the meeting on June 21st, prepared to make those recommendations. Because that is where we'll take the action, the vote, to propose to the county commission. And the timing of June 21st is before they begin. In July, they begin their budget, county begins their budget workshops, their hearing, and then the hearings in September. And so we want to get in front of them with this board, whose job is to make the recommendation, what our recommendation is.
I got one question.
Yes, sir.
The America's Cup or America's Magic, the 500,000, in our committee, we said that it was gonna come out of the fund balance carryover,
Right, out of that
3.3? Okay,
Out of this year's budget, and then that'll be in next year's budget as well.
okay,
But that's how they get funded this year.
okay.
So this year, it was proposed by the committee to take it out of the fund balance, and then proposing for next year to also have a line item
Oh, okay, I got
for
you,
the 500 out of the revenue and expenditure.
okay.
Any other discussion, questions, comments?
Move, we adjourn.
All right, thanks. So moved.
Second shortest meeting we ever had.
Thank you all. Thank you, audience, for being here. We appreciate it.